Evelyn Harrington was the kind of woman whose name made boardrooms fall silent. At just 29, she had built an empire out of steel discipline and sleepless nights. Her schedule was her armor, her success her only language. Yet, as she walked through Lax that morning, even her heels sounded tired. She was headed to Chicago for another investor summit, another battle she didn't have the strength to fight. Beneath her flawless exterior, a quiet exhaustion begged for rest and something real. Across the same terminal, Nathan Parker was struggling to zip a worn leather bag. A single father of 6-year-old Oliver, he had learned to balance life between playground laughter and overdue bills. His flight to Chicago wasn't for pleasure, it was for hope. A job interview that could finally bring stability after years of scraping by. But his phone buzzed, a message from his babysitter. Oliver's fever is 39.8. I'm taking him to the hospital. His heart clenched, and for a second, the world seemed to blur. Fate doesn't knock, it collides. As Evelyn hurried toward gate 23B, her coffee spilled all over a stranger's sleeve. "Watch where you're going," she snapped, the edge in her voice sharper than she intended. The man looked up, eyes kind despite the chaos. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "My mind's somewhere else. My son's sick." Evelyn hesitated for a moment, but her walls rose again. "We all have problems," she muttered, brushing past him. Yet, for some reason, his words lingered. Moments later, the boarding call echoed through the gate. Passengers filed in, weary and wordless. Evelyn adjusted her blazer, scanning her ticket, 12A. As she reached her row, her breath caught. Sitting in 12B was the man from the coffee spill. Nathan offered a sheepish smile, half apology, half irony. "Looks like fate has a sense of humor," he said. Evelyn forced a polite nod, sliding into her seat, wishing for the next 4 hours to pass quietly. As the plane ascended, Evelyn opened her laptop, the glow of spreadsheets reflecting in her tired eyes. Beside her, Nathan clutched a small plastic airplane, running his thumb across its wings. The air between them was thick with silence, the kind that hums with unspoken stories. For Evelyn, every number on her screen blurred into emptiness. For Nathan, every minute away from his son felt like failure. Neither of them knew that destiny was quietly adjusting its course. The cabin lights dimmed. Clouds floated beneath them like soft white oceans. Evelyn's fingers slowed, her eyelids heavy after days without rest. Nathan noticed the way her shoulders trembled slightly, the way her mask of perfection cracked under exhaustion. And then, gently, her head fell, resting against his shoulder. Nathan froze. The woman who had barked at him hours ago was now asleep beside him, peaceful as a child. For the first time in years, he didn't move, afraid to disturb a heart that had forgotten how to rest. For a long while, neither of them moved. The steady hum of the engines filled the space between strangers who had unknowingly become connected. Nathan sat still, afraid even his breathing might wake her. He could feel the faint rhythm of her heartbeat against his arm, fast at first, then slowing, as if the weight of the world on her shoulders had finally let go. Through the window, the clouds glowed gold beneath the setting sun. He smiled softly, whispering to himself, "Even strong people need somewhere to fall." When Evelyn finally stirred, the world outside had turned to night. She blinked, realizing where her head had rested and who it rested on. Her face flushed crimson. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she murmured, straightening her hair, her voice trembling. Nathan shook his head gently, his tone calm and warm. "Don't be. You looked like you hadn't slept in years." His kindness disarmed her completely. For the first time in months, Evelyn didn't know how to respond. The flight attendant arrived, offering dinner. Evelyn declined, her appetite lost in embarrassment, but Nathan accepted one tray, quietly placing it between them. "You should eat something," he said. "You'll need strength for whatever meeting you're flying to." She hesitated, then picked up a fork. Somehow, the simple act of sharing food in silence felt intimate. Between bites, Evelyn caught herself watching him, how his eyes softened every time he looked at the tiny airplane on his tray. Finally, curiosity won. "That toy," she said, pointing to the small blue plane. "Your son's?" Nathan nodded. "Oliver made me promise to bring it. He thinks it keeps me safe." His smile was tired but full of love. Evelyn felt a pang in her chest, an emotion she couldn't name. "He must miss you," she said softly. Nathan looked out the window. "I miss him more." For a moment, the distance between success and simplicity disappeared. They were just two souls, suspended above the clouds, both quietly broken. Evelyn found herself talking more than she planned. She told him about her father, the man who taught her business but forgot to teach her how to love. About the night she fell asleep at her desk, chasing numbers that never hugged her back. Nathan listened without judgment, his silence more comforting than any advice. When she paused, he said, "You don't have to prove you're strong to be worthy of peace." The words struck something deep inside her, a truth she'd been running from for years. By the time the captain announced their descent, something unexplainable had shifted. Evelyn looked at Nathan and realized she wasn't tired anymore, not in the same way. Wasn't coffee or comfort that kept her awake, but connection. He had seen through her armor without even trying. And though they were about to land, she felt like she'd been on a journey far longer than the flight itself. A journey that had just begun with a single accidental touch. The wheels touched the ground with a soft jolt, but Evelyn felt something deeper awaken inside her, something that had been asleep for years. The passengers clapped faintly, stretching, gathering their things. Nathan exhaled, pulling out his phone the moment signal returned. One unread message waited. His eyes scanned the words, and his heart stopped. "Oliver's fever just hit 40.2. The doctors are taking him in." His hand trembled. He tried to stand, but the aisle was crowded. Panic filled his chest like smoke. Evelyn noticed immediately. The confident man who had listened so calmly now looked as if the sky had fallen. "Nathan, what happened?" she asked, voice low but urgent. He swallowed hard. "My son, he's in the hospital. I should be there, but I can't. I'm stuck here." The helplessness in his eyes pierced her more than she expected. Without thinking, Evelyn opened her bag, pulling out her phone. "Tell me which hospital," she said firmly. "We'll get you there." Nathan blinked, confused. "You don't even know me." Evelyn met his gaze. "I don't need to." Minutes later, as passengers shuffled out of the cabin, Evelyn was already on a call with her assistant. Her tone was sharp, decisive, the way she was in boardrooms, but this time her authority came from compassion, not control. "Arrange a car at Gate C, priority clearance, and contact St. Mary's Children's Hospital in Chicago, patient name Oliver Parker." Nathan stared, speechless. He had seen power before, but never used like this, never for kindness. "Why are you helping me?" he whispered. Evelyn looked up from her phone. "Because no one ever did that for me when I needed it most." The car was waiting by the time they exited the terminal. The cold night air bit at their faces, the city lights painting streaks across the rain-slicked pavement. Nathan sat in the back seat, clutching his phone, whispering prayers under his breath. Evelyn sat beside him, silent, her hand resting near his, close but not touching. Every few minutes she glanced at him, at the way his eyes were wet but steady. She had sat beside countless men in luxury cars before, investors, partners, rivals, but none of them made her feel what this stranger did: humanity. As they neared the hospital, Evelyn's assistant called back. "They're ready for him," she said. "They know who you are." Evelyn only replied, "Good. Tell them who he is, a father." When the car stopped, Nathan jumped out before it even parked, running toward the entrance. Evelyn followed, heels clicking against the marble floor. her heart racing as if Oliver were her own. They found the room where a nurse stood waiting. "He's stable," she said. Nathan collapsed into a chair, relief breaking through his fear like dawn through storm clouds. Evelyn stood at the doorway, watching him hold his son's small hand. For the first time, she saw what love looked like when it wasn't dressed in perfection. Raw, messy, beautiful. Something inside her cracked open. She realized that in helping Nathan, she had also rescued herself. The flight might have ended hours ago, but the journey between their hearts had just begun. In that sterile hospital room, beneath the hum of machines, two strangers who met by accident found something far rarer than luck. They found grace. The night at the hospital was quiet, except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Nathan sat by Oliver's bedside, his fingers gently brushing his son's hair. Exhaustion hung heavy on his shoulders, yet he couldn't look away from the small chest rising and falling under the blanket. The door creaked softly, and when he turned, Evelyn was there, no longer in her sharp CEO aura, just a woman holding 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you haven't blinked in an hour," she said softly, handing him one. Nathan smiled weakly. "I'm afraid if I do, he might need me." Evelyn took the chair beside him. The sterile smell of antiseptic mixed with the faint sweetness of coffee. "You didn't have to come," he said. She looked down, stirring her drink. "Maybe not, but I wanted to." Nathan studied her for a moment. The woman who once scolded him now sat beside him in silence, her eyes carrying something gentler than sympathy. "You remind me of my mother," Evelyn said suddenly. "She used to sit like that when I got sick, watching me like she could fight the fever with love alone." Her voice cracked, and for the first time, she didn't hide it. Hours passed. The city outside was asleep, but inside that small room, something alive was growing. Not romance yet, but understanding. Evelyn leaned back, watching Nathan whisper stories to Oliver about rockets, skies, and bravery. His words were simple, but they carried warmth she hadn't felt in years. "You're good at this," she murmured. Nathan chuckled quietly. "Good at what?" "Making people believe the world is still kind." He looked at her, surprised, and said, "Maybe it is, if you stop running from it." She didn't answer, but her eyes said she'd heard every word. In the early morning light, Evelyn returned with breakfast, a bag of sandwiches and a small brown teddy bear. "For your co-pilot," she said, placing it beside Oliver's pillow. Nathan's throat tightened. "You didn't have to do that." Evelyn shrugged, forcing a smile. "It's not much. I just thought he'd like a friend when he wakes up." Nathan took a deep breath. "You've done more than enough. You gave me something I haven't felt in a long time." She looked at him curiously. "What's that?" "Hope." The word hung in the air, gentle and unshakable. Later that afternoon, Oliver woke up, blinking at the sunlight filtering through the blinds. "Dad," he whispered. Nathan rushed to his side, eyes brimming with relief. "Hey, buddy, you scared me." Oliver smiled weakly, noticing Evelyn. "Who's she?" Evelyn knelt beside the bed, her voice warm. "I'm your dad's friend, and I brought you a bear." The boy hugged it tight, grinning. "Thank you." Nathan watched them, realizing this woman, this stranger, had quietly stitched something broken inside his life. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in the world. That evening, as Evelyn prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Nathan stood, unsure what to say. "Evelyn," he began, "I don't know how to repay you." She turned, her smile faint but genuine. "Don't. Just promise me one thing." He frowned slightly. "What's that?" "When Oliver gets better, take a day off. Fly somewhere, anywhere. But this time, don't chase anything. Just live." Nathan nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling deep. She looked back one last time at the sleeping boy and whispered, "He's lucky to have you." But as she walked away, Nathan knew he was the lucky one. The next few days passed like a slow sunrise after a long storm. Oliver's fever broke, and the color slowly returned to his cheeks. Nurses smiled each time they passed the room, not just because the little boy was getting better, but because of the way the woman in the navy suit kept showing up with breakfast and quiet laughter. Evelyn was no longer the CEO in their eyes. She was the lady who read storybooks and made paper planes out of napkins. Nathan watched her from the chair by the window, wondering how someone could go from distant to irreplaceable so quickly. On the third morning, Evelyn arrived early, her hair tied back, holding a tray with 3 cups of hot chocolate. "One for the hero," she said, handing it to Oliver, "and one for his dad." Nathan accepted it with a grin. "You keep this up, and he'll think you're the fun parent." She laughed, the kind of laugh that carried warmth instead of pride. Maybe I just needed to remember how to be human again. Her eyes softened as she looked at Oliver. "He's teaching me." Nathan tilted his head. "Teaching you what?" "That kindness isn't weakness, it's courage." Later that day, while Oliver drew pictures on the hospital bed, Evelyn and Nathan sat by the window, watching snow begin to fall outside. "You gave up your conference, didn't you?" Nathan asked quietly. She hesitated, then nodded. "I did. It felt strange at first, but freeing." He smiled. "You don't regret it?" She turned to him. "For once, I didn't make a choice for profit. I made it for peace. And maybe for you." Nathan's breath caught, the room suddenly smaller, quieter. There were no walls between them now, only the shared warmth of what might be becoming love. That evening, Oliver proudly showed Evelyn a crayon drawing of 3 figures holding hands under a blue sky. "That's you," he said, pointing at the woman with yellow hair. Evelyn blinked, her heart tightening. "Me?" "Yeah, you're smiling. You make Daddy smile too." She didn't know what to say, so she just hugged him. Nathan watched from behind, his chest rising with gratitude and something deeper. For years, his world had been just 2. Now, somehow, it felt whole again. When it was finally time for Evelyn to leave, Oliver was well enough to wave from his bed. "Bye, Miss Eve," he called, clutching the teddy bear she'd brought. Evelyn turned to Nathan. "Take care of him, and yourself." "I will," he said, then hesitated. "Will I ever see you again?" She smiled faintly, eyes glimmering with something unspoken. "That depends." "On what?" "Whether you believe in chance or destiny." And with that, she walked away, leaving behind the faint scent of coffee and a promise neither of them could name. That night, after Evelyn was gone, Nathan sat in the dim hospital light, Oliver asleep beside him. He pulled out his phone and opened a message, one he hadn't sent yet. "Thank you. For everything." His thumb hovered over the screen, then stopped. Instead, he whispered it into the quiet room, knowing somehow she would feel it. Across town, in her hotel suite, Evelyn sat by the window, staring at the city below. For the first time in years, she didn't feel empty. Somewhere in Chicago, a little boy was sleeping soundly, and so was her heart. A week later, the hospital room stood empty except for the echo of laughter that had once filled it. Nathan and Oliver had gone home, but Evelyn couldn't shake the image of their faces, the way Oliver's small hand fit perfectly inside hers, the way Nathan's eyes softened when he spoke to his son. Back in Los Angeles, the city lights glittered as always, but they no longer felt like victory. Every success now reminded her of something she had left behind, something far more precious than titles or trophies. She realized that for all her power, she'd never truly belonged anywhere. Until that flight. Nathan, too, carried her in the quiet spaces of his day. He returned to his small apartment, fixing broken machines at a local workshop to make ends meet. Yet every time he picked up a wrench, he found himself thinking of her, the woman who had turned a stranger's panic into hope. Each night, when Oliver asked for bedtime stories, he spoke of Miss Eve, the lady who taught them that angels sometimes wear business suits. "Do you think she'll come back, Dad?" Oliver would ask. Nathan would smile faintly. "If she's meant to, son, she will." Winter melted into spring, and with it came letters, small at first, a thank you card, a photograph of Oliver holding the teddy bear, a message that simply said, "Still chasing peace." Evelyn replied with pictures of sunrises from her office window and quotes about slowing down. Their words became a bridge, short, steady, unspokenly tender. They never said the word love, but both knew it had already taken root in the silence between their messages. Months passed and life kept moving, but something about the world felt softer. Evelyn found herself visiting parks instead of boardrooms, volunteering at hospitals instead of cocktail events. Nathan's interview finally came through, and he got the job he'd flown to Chicago for. On his first day, he wore a tie that didn't match his shirt, but Oliver said it made him look like someone a CEO would fall in love with. Nathan laughed, not realizing how close his son's words were to truth. One snowy morning nearly a year later, Evelyn stepped out of a car in downtown Chicago. A new branch of her company was opening there. Reporters surrounded her, cameras flashing, but her eyes scanned the crowd for something else entirely. And then, through the sea of fei-feis, she saw them, Nathan in his work jacket and Oliver on his shoulders, waving a small toy airplane. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't remember what the reporters asked, only that she smiled for real this time, a smile made of warmth, not performance. As she approached them, Oliver jumped into her arms, shouting, "You came back!" Evelyn laughed through tears. Nathan looked at her quietly, the same calm strength she had leaned on once in the sky. "Told you," he said softly. "If it's meant to be," she finished his sentence, smiling through the snowflakes. "It will always find its way." And there, on a street where fate had chosen to circle back, they didn't need promises or perfect timing, only the understanding that sometimes love doesn't begin on the ground. It begins at 30,000 feet, when two lonely souls finally learn how to land. A year later, life had changed in ways neither of them could have imagined. Evelyn was no longer the untouchable CEO who hid behind her achievements. She had moved her company's headquarters to Chicago, not for business, but for belonging. Every morning, she stopped by a small cafe near the lake, where Nathan often brought Oliver for breakfast before school. It became their quiet ritual: coffee, laughter, and the kind of peace she used to think only existed in other people's lives. The woman who once lived by calendars and deadlines now lived by smiles and small moments. One evening, under the golden lights of a winter charity gala, Evelyn stood by the balcony, watching the snow fall softly onto the city she now called home. Behind her came a familiar voice, steady, warm. "You've built quite a life here," Nathan said, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "No," she replied, turning toward him with a smile. "We've built it." From across the room, Oliver was showing his paper airplane collection to guests in suits and gowns. Nathan chuckled. "He says his favorite flight was the one where you fell asleep." Evelyn laughed, her eyes glistening. "So do I." The music dimmed, replaced by the gentle murmur of conversation. Then Nathan took a deep breath, his hand trembling slightly. He knelt down right there, in front of everyone. Gasps filled the room, but Evelyn heard only his voice, soft, certain, and full of love. "Evelyn Harrington," he said, holding up a small silver ring. "Will you marry us, Oliver and me?" Her eyes filled with tears. She knelt too, cupping his face. "Yes," she whispered, 1,000 times yes." Oliver ran up, wrapping them both in a hug. The crowd erupted in applause, but the world around them faded until all that remained was home. 3 years later, laughter echoed through a sunlit kitchen. Evelyn, barefoot and glowing, carried a baby girl in her arms. Nathan flipped pancakes while Oliver pretended to be the family's official pilot. The smell of breakfast mixed with the sound of happiness, a symphony of everything she had once thought she'd never have. When Nathan turned, their eyes met, and she smiled. "Remember that flight?" she asked. He nodded, kissing her forehead. "How could I forget? It was the day heaven borrowed an airplane." Outside, the wind carried the laughter of a family who had found their forever. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself with fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a spilled coffee, a tired shoulder, and 2 strangers who needed exactly what the other had to give. Evelyn and Nathan's story wasn't about wealth or destiny. It was about timing, trust, and the courage to let someone see the cracks beneath your armor. Because it's in those cracks that the light finally enters, the light that turns strangers into family. As the camera fades, the final image lingers, the airplane toy on the kitchen counter beside a family photo under morning sunlight. A voice whispers, 4 hours in the sky changed their lives forever. Just imagine a flight like theirs, a flight that doesn't just take you to another city, but takes you home.